I sat frozen in the bank office, staring at estate documents from my late father. The account manager had just revealed that over $300,000 from my inheritance trust fund had been systematically withdrawn by my mother over the past 6 years. The final withdrawal memo contained 2 words that made my blood run cold. Brandon's tuition. Brandon Garrett. The same Brandon who had made my high school years a living nightmare. My own mother had stolen my future to fund my tormentor's education. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. Every red light between downtown and my mother's house felt like an eternity. The bank documents sat on my passenger seat, pages and pages of withdrawals that told a story I couldn't quite process yet. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, 15,000 for something called educational expenses, all signed off by Patricia Caldwell, trustee, my mother. The house looked exactly as it always did. Perfect, immaculate. The lawn manicured to country club standards, the flower beds bursting with seasonal blooms, the SUV in the driveway gleaming like it had just rolled off the lot. This was the house I grew up in, the house my father had worked 60-hour weeks to pay off before cancer took him 3 years ago. Now it felt like enemy territory. I could hear voices through the front door. Right, Tuesday afternoon. Book club. My mother's weekly performance as the cultured, sophisticated widow. I didn't knock. I walked straight in. 6 women sat in the living room, wine glasses in hand, some hardcover bestseller on the coffee table. They all turned to look at me. My mother's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, recognition, and then something that looked like fear before she smoothed it into a smile. I looked through the window at my house full of people. Real people. Honest people. People who celebrated success instead of exploiting it. We need to talk. Now. Her book club friends exchanged glances. My mother stood, still smiling that frozen smile. Ladies, I'm so sorry. Family matter. We'll pick up next week with chapter 12. They gathered their things quickly, shooting curious looks between us. I stood in the doorway, holding my folder of documents, not moving until the last one filed out. The door clicked shut. The smile fell off my mother's face. What is this about? You can't just barge in here and embarrass me in front of my friends. I threw the folder on the coffee table. Papers scattered across the surface, covering the glossy book cover. You want to tell me about these? She glanced down, and I saw it again. That flash of fear. But she recovered fast. She'd always been good at that. I don't know what you're talking about. $300,000, Mom, from my trust fund. The money Dad left for me. You've been taking it for 6 years. That's ridiculous. You're misunderstanding something. I'm misunderstanding bank records? Transaction histories? Your signature on every single withdrawal authorization? She sat down, smoothing her skirt. When she looked up at me, her expression had changed again. Now, she looked tired. Older. You're being dramatic, Lester. You always were too sensitive. Sensitive? You stole from me. I didn't steal anything. That money was family money. Your father left me as trustee because he trusted my judgment. To use it for me, for my future, not to drain it. She poured herself more wine from the bottle on the table. Her hand was steady. Things are more complicated than you understand. Then explain it to me. Explain Brandon Garrett. The wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. How do you know about Brandon? The bank manager was very thorough. Brandon's tuition. That's what the memo said on the last withdrawal. $15,000 for Brandon's tuition. I felt something burning in my chest, spreading up into my throat. Brandon Garrett. The same Brandon who made my life hell for 4 years. The same Brandon who put me in the hospital twice. Who made me so miserable I begged you to let me transfer schools, and you said no. I needed to toughen up. That Brandon? You're misremembering. Brandon wasn't that bad to you. He broke my collarbone, Mom. He gave me a concussion. He locked me in a janitor's closet overnight, and I missed a final exam. He posted photos of me online that I'm still trying to get scrubbed from the internet. He made every single day a nightmare, and you're sitting here telling me I'm misremembering? She took a long drink of wine. High school was a long time ago. People change. Brandon has changed. What does that mean? How would you know if Brandon changed? Silence. She looked at the wine in her glass like it held answers. Mom, how do you know Brandon? I've been mentoring him. Through the church. There's a program for at-risk youth, and Brandon needed help. His father left when he was young. His mother got cancer. He had potential, Lester. He had dreams. He wanted to go to medical school, and there was no way he could afford it. Someone had to help him. The room tilted. Someone had to help him. So you chose my bully. You took my inheritance and gave it to the person who tortured me. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me, because I'm having trouble understanding how a mother takes money meant for her own son and hands it to the person who hurt him. She stood up, her composure cracking. You want to know the truth? Fine. Brandon reached out to me 2 years after you graduated. He apologized. He explained everything he'd been going through, all the pain in his life that made him lash out. He wanted to make amends. He wanted to be better. And when I saw him, really saw him, I saw someone who could do something with his life if he just had a chance. And I couldn't? I didn't deserve a chance? You had plenty of chances, Lester. Your father and I paid for your college. We gave you everything. That was college money. The trust fund was for after. For starting a business, or buying a house, or having something to fall back on. Dad specifically set it up for that. Your father isn't here anymore. Her voice was sharp now, defensive. I am. And I had to make decisions about how to use family resources. Brandon had nothing. You have a job. You have a degree. You have opportunities. All I did was level the playing field a little, by stealing from me. It wasn't stealing. I was the trustee. I had discretion over how to use the funds. For my benefit. That's what being a trustee means. I used my judgment. Brandon was in crisis. You were fine. I'm not fine, Mom. I'm 32 years old, and I found out today that the safety net I thought I had doesn't exist, because you gave it away to someone who terrorized me. How is that fine? She crossed her arms. Maybe if you'd made better choices with your life, you wouldn't need to rely on your father's money. The words hit like a slap. I stared at her, this woman who raised me, who I thought I knew. Better choices. Like what? Like becoming a doctor? Like Brandon? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I gathered the papers back into the folder. My hands were shaking again, but not from shock anymore. From rage. Pure, cold rage. You're going to give me that money back. All of it. Plus interest. She laughed. Actually laughed. Or what? You'll sue me? I'm your mother, Lester. Family doesn't do that to family. You stole from me. You funded my bully. You chose him over me. Don't talk to me about family. I walked to the door. Her voice followed me. If you pursue this, you'll regret it. I have lawyers, Lester. Good ones. And everyone in this town will know you're attacking your own mother over money. Is that really the person you want to be? I looked back at her. She stood in the middle of her perfect living room with her wine and her books and her complete certainty that she'd done nothing wrong. I'll take my chances, I said, and walked out. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment with my laptop, diving down a rabbit hole that got darker with every click. Brandon Garrett wasn't hard to find. He had social media accounts set to public, probably for professional networking. His profile picture showed a confident man in scrubs, stethoscope around his neck, smiling at the camera like he didn't have a care in the world. Dr. Brandon Garrett, medical resident at Providence General Hospital. I scrolled through his posts, hospital life updates, medical achievements, inspirational quotes about perseverance. And then, about halfway down his feed, I found what I was looking for. A photo from 3 years ago. Brandon in a cap and gown, medical school graduation, and standing next to him, beaming with pride. my mother. The caption made my stomach turn. Couldn't have done it without this amazing woman. Patricia Caldwell stepped in when my family couldn't afford my dreams. She's my second mother, my mentor, and the reason I'm standing here today. Thank you for believing in me. 247 likes. Dozens of comments. So inspiring. What a beautiful story. The world needs more people like Patricia. I kept scrolling. More photos. Brandon and my mother at his white coat ceremony. Brandon and my mother at some charity gala. Brandon and my mother at a restaurant, celebrating something. They'd been in each other's lives for 10 years. A decade of relationship building while I'd been completely in the dark. Then I found the newspaper article. Local weekly paper. The kind that runs feel-good stories about community members. The headline: From hardship to healing. Local resident overcomes adversity to become doctor. I read every word. Brandon talked about growing up in a single-parent household, his mother's illness, the financial struggles. And then, I was blessed to meet Patricia Caldwell through a church mentorship program. She saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. She provided financial support, guidance, and believed in me. Without her intervention, I'd never have made it to medical school. She changed my life. No mention of where the money came from. No mention of me. No mention of the 4 years he made my existence miserable. I was about to close the browser when I noticed something in the related article's sidebar. Another story about Brandon, more recent. This one had a different photo. Brandon in a suit, arm around a woman in an elegant dress. Both of them smiling at the camera. I knew that face. I'd kissed that face. I'd loved that face. Amanda Richardson, my girlfriend from college. We'd dated for 2 years, talked about moving in together, made plans for a future. Then 5 years ago, she'd broken up with me out of nowhere. Said she needed space, needed to figure herself out, the usual breakup lines. I'd been devastated for months, and now she was engaged to Brandon Garrett. The article was about their engagement. Young doctor finds love, planning a spring wedding. The bride-to-be worked as a healthcare administrator. They'd met through mutual connections 2 years ago. Mutual connections. I knew exactly who those mutual connections were. I grabbed my phone and found Amanda's number. I'd deleted it after the breakup, but I still had it written in an old address book. The kind my father had insisted I keep, back when he was worried about relying too much on technology. I'd thought it was old-fashioned then. Now I was grateful. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Amanda. It's Lester. A pause. Lester. Wow. It's been a while. How are you? I need to talk to you about Brandon. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay. That's random. What about him? How did you meet him? Why does that matter? Just humor me. Please. She sighed. Through your mom, actually. She invited me to some charity thing about 2 years ago. She said she wanted to reconnect, see how I was doing. Brandon was there. We hit it off. Why are you asking? What did she tell you about Brandon and me? She said you guys were friends in high school. That you'd grown apart, but she still kept in touch with him through church work. Is there a problem? Friends. My mother had told Amanda we were friends. Did Brandon ever talk to you about high school? About me? A little. He said you were kind of a loner. That he tried to include you in stuff, but you preferred to keep to yourself. He said you were always a bit different. I closed my eyes. The rewriting of history was complete. Brandon had flipped the script entirely, and my mother had helped him do it. Amanda, that's not what happened. Brandon bullied me for 4 years. It was bad, really bad. Silence on the line. Lester, I don't know what's going on with you right now, but that doesn't sound like Brandon at all. He's one of the kindest people I know. Did you know my mother has been funding his education? With money that was supposed to be mine? I know Patricia helped him when he needed it. That's what good people do. They help others. I don't understand why you're being so negative about this. Because he terrorized me. And now, He's getting rewarded for it with my inheritance, while my own mother lies about what happened. You sound paranoid, Lester. Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist or something. This anger isn't healthy. I'm not angry. I'm telling you the truth. Your truth, which apparently is very different from everyone else's. Look, I have to go. Brandon and I are meeting the wedding planner in 20 minutes. I hope you figure out whatever's going on with you. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at nothing. Nobody believed me. My own ex-girlfriend, who'd known me intimately for 2 years, believed Brandon over me without hesitation. The next morning, I called a lawyer. His name was Gary Brennan. Came recommended by a friend of a friend. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Not exactly the high-powered legal representation I'd hoped for, but it was what I could afford. Gary listened to my story, looking at the bank documents I'd spread across his desk. He was in his 50s, gray hair, tired eyes, the look of someone who'd seen every kind of family drama imaginable. "This is messy," he said when I finished. "Family trust disputes usually are. Can I get the money back? Maybe. Depends on the exact language of the trust documents. If your mother had broad discretionary power as trustee, she might have been technically within her rights to distribute funds as she saw fit, even if it wasn't what your father intended. Even if she gave it to someone outside the family? Even then. Trustees have significant latitude, unless the trust document specifically restricts them. Do you have the original trust paperwork? No. My mother has all of that. We'll need to subpoena it. We'll also need to establish that her distributions were not in your best interest as beneficiary, which means proving the funds went to inappropriate recipients, and that she acted in bad faith. He leaned back in his chair. I'll be honest with you, Lester. These cases are expensive, time-consuming, and often end badly. Family members take sides. Reputations get damaged. Even if you win, you might lose relationships permanently. My mother already chose someone else over me. I don't have much left to lose. He nodded slowly. All right, I'll draw up the initial paperwork. We'll request all financial records, all trust documents, everything. But Lester, prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better. I left his office with a retainer agreement and a sick feeling in my stomach. Gary was right. This was going to get worse. I just didn't know how much worse. The legal notice arrived 6 days later, hand-delivered by a process server who caught me coming home from the grocery store. I signed for it standing in my apartment parking lot, bags of food at my feet. Patricia Caldwell, petitioner, versus Lester Caldwell, respondent. My mother was suing me, not for anything real, for harassment, for threatening behavior, for causing emotional distress. She was requesting a restraining order that would prohibit me from coming within 500 feet of her home, her church, or any place she regularly frequented. I called Gary immediately. Did you see this? Just got the notification. She's getting ahead of the story. This is a tactical move. A tactical move? She's claiming I threatened her. I never threatened her. She's claiming your confrontation at her home was aggressive and threatening. That you burst in, disrupted her gathering, made accusations, and have been harassing her since. She's painted herself as the frightened widow who's being attacked by her unstable son. That's not what happened. Doesn't matter. What matters is what she can make people believe. And Lester, I did some digging on her attorney. Stuart Matheson, big firm downtown. He doesn't come cheap. Your mother is preparing for war. I read through the petition again. The language was careful, calculated. I'd burst into her home uninvited. I'd made wild accusations in front of witnesses. I'd been fixated on financial matters since my father's death, displaying signs of instability. I was a threat to her safety and peace of mind. Attached to her petition was a statement from Brandon. He'd provided testimony that I'd contacted his fiancée with disturbing accusations, that I'd been spreading malicious rumors about him, and that he was concerned about Mrs. Caldwell's safety given my apparent obsession with perceived wrongs from years ago. Brandon had also included a psychological evaluation, not of me, of himself. A letter from a therapist stating that Brandon had successfully processed childhood trauma and adolescent behavioral issues, that he'd taken accountability for past mistakes, and was now a stable, contributing member of society who poses no threat to anyone. It was masterful. He'd gotten ahead of the bullying accusations by framing them as adolescent behavioral issues he'd already dealt with in therapy. He'd positioned himself as the reformed bad boy who'd grown up, while painting me as the one who couldn't let go. My phone rang. It was my sister, Julia. "What the hell are you doing, Lester? Did Mom call you? She's in tears. She says you attacked her, that you're trying to destroy her reputation over money. Please tell me this isn't true." "It's not true. Not the way she's telling it." "Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're going after Mom for helping someone in need. Do you have any idea how this looks? Did she tell you she took $300,000 from my trust fund without asking me? She said she used discretionary funds for charitable purposes, which she's allowed to do as trustee. She said Dad set it up that way because he trusted her judgment." "Julia, she gave my inheritance to Brandon Garrett, my high school bully, the guy who put me in the hospital. Mom says you're exaggerating what happened in high school, that you and Brandon just didn't get along, and now you're rewriting history to make yourself look like a victim." "I was a victim. He broke my collarbone. Mom says that was an accident during gym class." "Are you serious right now? You believe her over me?" "I believe Mom isn't the villain you're trying to make her out to be. She lost Dad 3 years ago. She's been alone, trying to do good in the world, and now her own son is attacking her. Can you imagine how that feels? Can you imagine how it feels to find out your mother stole from you to fund someone who tortured you?" "Nobody stole anything, Lester. You're not entitled to that money just because Dad set up a trust. Mom has every right to use it as she sees fit. That's what being a trustee means. Not if she's using it in bad faith." "Bad faith?" "She helped a young man go to medical school. She changed his life. How is that bad faith?" I realized then that my mother had already won with Julia. She'd framed the narrative perfectly. Julia saw me as the greedy, vindictive son attacking the charitable, grieving widow. Nothing I said would change that. "Fine. Believe what you want. I'm trying to help you, Lester. Drop this before you do permanent damage to this family." She hung up. My brother Marcus called an hour later. He was younger than Julia, closer to my age, and his tone was less accusatory, more confused. "Hey, so, what's going on?" I explained everything. The bank discovery, the confrontation, the lawsuit. Marcus listened without interrupting. "That's heavy," he said when I finished. "Did Brandon really bully you that bad?" "I don't remember it being that serious." "You were in middle school. You weren't there. I remember you being miserable, though. And I remember Mom saying you needed to toughen up, stop being so sensitive." He paused. "I also remember Dad arguing with her about it. He wanted to pull you out, put you in private school. Mom said no." "I didn't know that." "Yeah. They fought about it a lot that year. Dad thought Mom was being too harsh on you. She thought he was coddling you." Another pause. "Look, I don't know what to think about all this. It's weird that Mom gave your money to Brandon. But Julia's right that technically, as trustee, she probably had the authority. Even if it wasn't what Dad wanted? I don't know what Dad wanted. None of us do, really. He's gone. Thanks for the support, Marcus. I'm not trying to be unsupportive. I'm trying to be realistic. If you fight Mom on this, you're going to lose more than money. You know that, right?" "I already have." Over the next week, the phone calls kept coming. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my mother's friends from church. All of them had the same message. I was being cruel, vindictive, ungrateful. My mother had done nothing wrong. I was tearing the family apart over money. I should be ashamed. The local newspaper ran another story about Brandon. This one framed as a follow-up to the earlier feature. Local doctor faces harassment from mentally unstable individual. They didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew my family would figure it out. The article portrayed Brandon as a victim of baseless accusations from someone unable to move past perceived high school slights. My mother was quoted, "I'm heartbroken that anyone would try to tear down a young man who's worked so hard to better himself. Some people would rather see others fail than celebrate their success." I was being systematically destroyed. My reputation, my family relationships, my credibility. And my mother was orchestrating all of it, with the precision of a military campaign. Then I found out she'd taken more. Gary called me into his office. He had new documents spread across his desk. We got the subpoenaed financial records. "Lester, there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Your father set up a memorial scholarship fund before he died. $20,000, meant to provide annual scholarships to students at the high school where he taught. Your mother was managing it as administrator." "Was?" "The account is empty. She withdrew the entire amount 6 months ago." I felt cold. Where did it go? According to the transaction memo, it was a gift. To Brandon Garrett, a wedding gift. I hired a private investigator. Gary advised against it, said it was a waste of money I didn't have, but I did it anyway. His name was Dennis Wright, former cop turned freelance investigator. He worked out of a cramped office that smelled like coffee and cigarettes. "Find out everything," I told him. "About Brandon, about my mother, about whatever they're hiding." "That's pretty broad. Can you be more specific about what you're looking for?" "I don't know what I'm looking for. That's why I'm hiring you. But there's something else going on here. People don't just steal from their own kids and fund their bullies unless there's more to the story." Dennis nodded. "All right. Give me 2 weeks." He called me in 10 days. "You need to come to my office. I found something." When I got there, he had a file folder waiting. Thick with documents, printouts, screenshots. "Your mother and Brandon Garrett formed a limited liability company 2 years ago," he said without preamble. "Garrett Sports Medicine, LLC. It's registered in this state, meant to be a private practice specializing in sports medicine, physical therapy, injury treatment, that kind of thing. A business? A business. And your mother is listed as a 30% owner. She invested $150,000 as seed capital. From your trust fund, I'm assuming." I stared at the incorporation documents. There it was in black and white. Patricia Caldwell, 30% equity stake. Brandon Garrett, 60%. And Amanda Richardson, 10%, listed as practice manager. "This wasn't charity," I said slowly. "This was an investment. Looks that way. They've been planning to open the practice next year. Already have a location scouted, equipment vendors lined up, the whole 9 yards. Your mother stands to make a significant return if the practice succeeds." "Did she tell Brandon where the money came from?" "Can't say for sure, but given that they're business partners, he probably knows. Or at least suspects." Dennis pulled out another document. "There's more. Your mother updated her will 8 months ago." He slid the papers across the desk. I read through the legalese until I got to the distribution section. Upon Patricia Caldwell's death, her estate would be divided as follows: 40% to Brandon Garrett, 40% to Julia Caldwell, 20% to Marcus Caldwell, Lester Caldwell, nothing. There was a note attached, an explanation for the exclusion. "Lester has demonstrated through his actions and attitudes that he cannot be trusted with family resources. He has shown himself to be vindictive, unstable, and motivated solely by greed. For the protection of the family legacy, I cannot, in good conscience, leave him any portion of my estate." When did she write this? The date is on the top. 8 months ago. Before you found out about any of this. She was planning to cut me out before I even knew what she'd done. Seems that way. She's been building a paper trail. I found statements she gave to her attorney, her financial advisor, even her priest. In all of them, she expresses concerns about your mental health, your financial responsibility, your ability to handle money. She's been establishing a narrative that you're unstable and can't be trusted. None of that is true. Doesn't have to be true. just has to be documented. If anyone challenges her decisions, she has a stack of professional statements backing up her version of events. I felt sick. This wasn't a series of bad decisions. This was a systematic plan to replace me with Brandon, to write me out of the family entirely, and to make it look justified while doing it. "There's one more thing," Dennis said. "And this is where it gets interesting. Your mother has been telling people you have addiction problems. Drug issues, specifically. I found references to it in emails to her attorney, mentions in conversations with family members. She's been planting seeds that you're using drugs, and that's why you need money." "I don't use drugs. I barely drink." "I believe you. But she's been creating a story, and if she can make that story stick, it explains away everything. Why she controlled the trust money so carefully, why she gave it to someone more deserving, why she's scared of you now. It all fits together into a neat little package." I left Dennis's office with the file and a new understanding of what I was up against. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about my mother systematically erasing me from the family and replacing me with Brandon. I needed to confront Brandon directly. I found him at the hospital. Providence General had a massive parking structure. I waited by his car, a nice sedan that probably cost more than I made in a year. He came out around 7 in the evening, still in scrubs, looking tired but satisfied. The look of someone who'd had a good day. He saw me and stopped. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Recognition, calculation, then a practiced smile. "Lester, this is a surprise. We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea. You've been making some pretty serious accusations. My lawyer says I shouldn't speak to you." "Your lawyer?" "Right. How much is my mother paying for that lawyer, Brandon?" The smile didn't waver. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Garrett Sports Medicine, LLC. Ring a bell? 30% ownership stake? $150,000 in seed capital? All of it from my inheritance?" Now, the smile faded. "That's a business investment. Perfectly legal. Your mother saw potential in a sound business plan and chose to invest. That's not a crime. It is when the money wasn't hers to invest. She was the trustee. She had discretion. Maybe, if you'd made something of yourself, she'd have invested in you instead. Is that what you tell yourself? That you earned this?" He stepped closer. When we were in high school, he'd been bigger than me, stronger, always using his size to intimidate. He still had that same energy, that same barely contained aggression wrapped in a civilized veneer. I did earn it. I worked my way through medical school. I studied while you were probably partying. I built something with my life while you've been coasting on Daddy's memory. Patricia saw that. She saw someone worth investing in. That's not my fault. You made my life hell. For years. And now you're being rewarded for it with my money. High school was a long time ago. Kids do stupid things. I've moved past it. Maybe you should too. Moved past it? You broke my collarbone. You gave me a concussion. You made me want to die, Brandon. Do you remember that? Do you remember the note they found in my locker? The one I wrote because I couldn't take another day of your torture? Something flickered in his eyes again. Discomfort, maybe, or just annoyance that I was bringing up ancient history. I was dealing with my own stuff back then. My home life was a disaster. I acted out. Yeah, I was a bully. I've admitted that. I've been to therapy for it. I've processed it and moved on. But you know what? You were an easy target. You walked around like a victim, like you wanted someone to notice how miserable you were. You practically had a sign on your back that said, "Pick on me." So it was my fault. I'm saying we both played a role in what happened, and it's time to let it go. Patricia has been more of a mother to me than my own mother ever was. She saw something in me worth saving. She gave me a chance. And yeah, maybe I'm getting things you wanted, but that's life. Not everyone gets a trophy just for showing up. He pulled out his keys, clicked the unlock button. We're done here. If you contact me again, I'll get a restraining order. And if you keep harassing Patricia, I'll make sure you regret it. I've got resources now, Lester. Real resources. Money. Lawyers. Connections. You're out of your league." He got in his car and drove away. I stood there in the parking structure, shaking with rage. Then I remembered. I'd been recording. My phone in my jacket pocket. Voice recorder app running. I'd gotten all of it. I brought the recording to Gary. We sat in his office listening to it 3 times. "This is good," he said finally. "It shows his character. It shows he knows about the money and where it came from. But Lester, I have to tell you, it's not a smoking gun." He admits to being a bully but frames it as childhood mistakes he's dealt with. A judge might see this as proof you can't let go of the past. What about him admitting my mother gave him the money? He calls it an investment, which, according to the business documents, it technically was. His lawyer will argue your mother made a sound business decision with funds she had discretion to invest. What about him threatening me, saying he'll make me regret it? Vague. Not specific enough to be a genuine threat. His lawyer will say he was warning you about legal consequences if you continue what they're calling harassment. Gary rubbed his eyes. And there's another problem. You recorded this without his knowledge. This state requires 2-party consent for recordings. This is inadmissible in court. So it's useless? Not entirely. It shows us what we're up against. But we can't use it as evidence. I left his office feeling defeated. Every door I tried to open, my mother and Brandon had already closed. Then things got worse. My boss called me into his office 2 days later. Randall Simmons, owner of the marketing firm where I'd worked as a graphic designer for 6 years. His face was uncomfortable, not meeting my eyes. "Lester, we need to talk about your performance lately." "My performance? You've missed deadlines. The Henderson project was late. The Marston designs weren't up to your usual standard. You've been distracted, making mistakes. I've been dealing with some personal issues, but I've been keeping up with my work. That's not what the team is seeing. And honestly, I've gotten some feedback from clients that you've seemed off, not focused." "What clients?" "I can't disclose that. But the point is, we need to make a change. We're going to have to let you go." I sat there, stunned. "You're firing me. We're ending your employment. We'll give you 2 weeks severance, help you transition. But we need to do this now. Is this because of my mother? Did someone from her book club say something to you? Your wife goes to her church." His face reddened. "This is purely a business decision based on your recent performance. Don't make it into something it's not." But I knew. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. My mother's influence reached everywhere in this town. One word from her, one concerned comment about her troubled son, and doors started closing. 2 weeks later, my landlord knocked on my apartment door. Frank Morris, a man I'd known for 4 years, who'd never had a problem with me before. "Lester, I need to talk to you about your lease." "What about it?" "I'm not going to be able to renew it when it expires next month." "I'm sorry, but I'm giving you notice." "Why? Have I done something wrong?" "No, nothing like that. It's just that I need the unit for family. My nephew is moving to town, needs a place." "Your nephew?" "Yeah. So you'll need to find somewhere else by the end of next month." I knew this was a lie. Frank's nephew lived in California and had no plans to move. Frank went to my mother's church. I'd seen him at services on the rare occasions I'd attended. "Does this have anything to do with Patricia Caldwell?" His face went carefully neutral. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do. Look, Lester, I heard you're going through some stuff. Family problems. The church has been praying for you. Maybe you should reach out to your mother, try to work things out. Whatever happened between you two, I'm sure it can be fixed. Family is important." He left before I could respond. I was being pushed out, systematically. My job gone, my apartment gone soon. My family relationships destroyed. My reputation in tatters. I was running out of money, running out of options, and running out of time. I moved into a motel on the edge of town. The kind that rents by the week, where the carpet smells like mildew, and you can hear every conversation through the walls. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had fallen apart so completely in just a few months. My phone barely rang anymore. Julia had stopped taking my calls. Marcus sent occasional texts, but wouldn't meet in person. My friends had heard the rumors, seen the social media posts, and most of them had quietly drifted away. Nobody wants to associate with someone who's attacking their own mother. I started going through my father's old belongings. I'd put them in storage after he died. Couldn't bear to sort through them. But now, with nothing else to do and nowhere else to turn, I rented a storage unit key and spent an afternoon surrounded by boxes of his life. Books, clothes, teaching supplies from his 30 years as a high school history teacher, photos, awards, the accumulated debris of a life well lived. And then, in a box marked personal, I found his journals. My father had been a sporadic journal keeper. Not daily entries, just occasional thoughts when something weighed on him. I opened the most recent one, from his final year of life when cancer was killing him slowly. The entries were painful to read. His fear, his pain, his grief at leaving us. But there was something else too. Worry about my mother. One entry, dated 6 months before he died. Patricia has changed. The illness has changed her. Or maybe it's revealing something that was always there. She's obsessed with status, with appearance, with what the neighbors think. We argued today about Lester's trust fund. I want to lock it down, make sure he's protected. She fought me on every provision. Said I don't trust her judgment. Maybe I don't anymore. Another entry, 2 months before he died. I'm too weak to fight her now. The lawyers keep calling, wanting me to finalize the trust documents. Patricia insists she needs discretion to manage things properly. I've tried to include protections, but she undermines every attempt. I'm afraid of what will happen when I'm gone. She's been mentioning that Brandon boy lately. Says he needs help. Says Lester needs to let go of high school grudges. I remember what that boy did to our son. Patricia has forgotten, or she doesn't care. The final entry, 1 week before he died. If something happens to me, I hope Lester knows to check everything carefully. Patricia has changed so much since I got sick. I don't recognize her anymore. She talks about Brandon like he's her son. Talks about Lester like he's a disappointment. I've failed to protect him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I sat on the floor of the storage unit, my father's journal in my hands, and cried for the first time since this all started. My father had known. He'd seen what my mother was becoming. He'd tried to protect me, but he'd run out of time. And now I was alone, holding his words, his warnings, his apologies. But there was something else in that box. Another folder, stuffed in the back. I pulled it out. Trust documents. But not the ones my mother had filed. These were different. Earlier versions. Drafts my father had worked on with a different attorney before he got too sick to fight. I read through them carefully. The language was clear, specific. The trust was for my benefit, and my benefit only. The trustee's discretion was extremely limited. Distributions could only be made for education, medical needs, housing, or business investment directly benefiting the named beneficiary. No charitable donations, no third-party beneficiaries. These were the documents my father had wanted. Before my mother convinced him to use her attorney, her version, her loopholes. I called Gary from the storage unit parking lot. I found something. Original trust documents. Different from what my mother filed. They show my father's true intent. Can you bring them in? I'm coming now. Gary reviewed the documents for an hour, while I sat in his office drinking bad coffee. Finally, he looked up. This changes things. These clearly show your father's intent was for the trust to benefit only you, with very limited trustee discretion. But Lester, your mother's lawyer will argue these were draft documents, not the final version. They'll say your father changed his mind, that the later documents represent his actual wishes. He didn't change his mind. He ran out of strength to fight her. Can you prove that? I pulled out the journal. Maybe. Gary read the relevant entries. His expression shifted from skepticism to interest. This is compelling. It shows your father had concerns about your mother's intentions. It shows he felt pressured to change the trust documents against his better judgment. It's not ironclad, but combined with everything else, it builds a case. He leaned back. Lester, I think we might actually have a shot at this. It's still going to be hard. It's still going to be expensive. But we're not dead in the water anymore. For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides despair. Hope. Fragile and thin, but hope. When's the court date? 2 weeks. Start preparing yourself. This is going to be ugly. I spent the next week holed up in my motel room, going through everything with Gary, building the case, organizing evidence, preparing testimony. We had the original trust documents showing my father's intent. We had his journal entries showing my mother's pressure and manipulation. We had the business partnership documents showing this wasn't charity but investment. We had bank records showing the systematic draining of my trust fund. What we didn't have was something to counter the narrative my mother had so carefully constructed. The story of the generous widow helping a deserving young man, the ungrateful son attacking his charitable mother. That story had taken root in the community, in my family, everywhere. Then, 5 days before the court date, my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Lester Caldwell? Yes. Who's this? My name is Taylor Hudson. We haven't met, but we need to talk. About Brandon Garrett. How did you get my number? I have my ways. Look, I saw the newspaper article about you and Brandon and your mother. I saw your mother's name, recognized it from when I was dating Brandon. I've been following your situation online, and I think I can help. Help how? Can we meet? Somewhere public. There are things you need to know about Brandon. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Taylor was around my age, professional looking, with the kind of carefully maintained composure of someone who'd been through something difficult and come out harder for it. She got straight to the point. I dated Brandon during our first year of medical school. 8 months. Worst 8 months of my life. What happened? At first, he was perfect. Charming, attentive, ambitious. Everything you'd want. But once we were together, things changed. He was controlling. He needed to know where I was all the time, who I was talking to. He'd go through my phone, my emails. If I didn't respond to his texts fast enough, he'd show up wherever I was. She took a sip of coffee, gathering herself. It got worse. He'd put me down constantly. Tell me I wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough, that I was lucky he was with me because nobody else would want me. He isolated me from my friends, made me doubt myself. And if I tried to push back, he'd flip it around, make it seem like I was being crazy or oversensitive. Sounds familiar, I said quietly. When I finally got the courage to break up with him, he lost it. Threatened to destroy my medical career. Said he'd spread rumors about me, tell people I was unstable, that I had substance abuse problems. And he did. He went to our professors, our classmates, told them I was having a breakdown, that I was erratic and unreliable. Did anyone believe him? Enough people did. I was suddenly under scrutiny. My performance was questioned. I felt like I was going crazy. Finally, I had to transfer schools just to escape him. Started over at a different program across the country. Her eyes met mine, but I kept evidence. Text messages, emails, voicemails, all of it showing what he really is. I kept it because I knew someday he'd do this to someone else, and I wanted to be ready. Why didn't you report him? I tried, but he's good at this. He's been doing it his whole life, I think. He knows how to be charming when it matters, how to make himself look like the victim, and he has this way of finding powerful people to protect him. Like your mother. What do you know about my mother? Brandon talked about her all the time. He'd laugh about how easy she was to manipulate, how she thought of him like a son, and he just had to play the role and she'd give him whatever he wanted. He called her his personal ATM. Said she was so desperate to fix the son she was disappointed in that she'd latched onto him instead. The words hit like physical blows. Will you testify? In court? Yes. That's why I'm here. I saw what he's doing to you, and I saw your mother enabling it, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. He needs to be stopped. Taylor gave me copies of everything. Hundreds of text messages showing Brandon's controlling, abusive behavior. Emails where he threatened her career. Voicemails where his polished facade cracked, and his real personality showed through. It was damning. Gary was thrilled when I brought him the evidence. This is exactly what we needed. It shows his pattern of behavior. It shows he's manipulative and abusive. It undermines the character witness statements he and your mother have been providing. Is it enough? Combined with everything else? I think so. But I've got something else too. Remember I hired a forensic accountant to review your mother's finances? Yeah. She found something big. He pulled out a thick report. The forensic accountant had gone deep into my mother's financial history. Bank accounts, credit cards, investment accounts, the trust fund, everything. And she'd found a pattern. Your mother hasn't just taken money from your trust fund. She was treasurer of her church women's guild. $35,000 missing from their accounts over 3 years. She managed your father's Veterans Memorial Fund, the one we already knew about. $18,000 gone. And here's the big one. She had financial power of attorney over your grandmother's accounts for the last 2 years before your grandmother died. $60,000 in suspicious withdrawals that can't be accounted for. She stole from her own mother? Looks that way. The accountant traced where a lot of the money went. Some to Brandon, yes, but a significant amount went to personal expenses, luxury trips, designer clothes, and gambling. Your mother has a gambling problem, Lester. She's been losing big at the local casino. $40,000 in documented losses over the past 2 years. I stared at the report. My mother, the pillar of respectability, the charitable widow, had been systematically stealing from everyone around her to fund a gambling addiction. The Brandon funding was partially real, Gary continued. She did want to help him, but it was also a cover. She needed legitimate-looking expenses to hide her gambling losses, her overspending. The trust fund was the easiest target because she had control of it. But when that wasn't enough, she started embezzling from other sources. Can we prove this? The forensic accountant has bank records, transaction histories, everything. We can prove she's taken over $500,000 from various sources over the years. We can show a pattern of financial deception and theft. This isn't just about your inheritance anymore. This is fraud, embezzlement, potentially criminal. The next day, Gary filed amended complaints. We subpoenaed church financial records. We contacted the Veterans Organization about the Memorial Fund. We requested my grandmother's estate records from the probate court. My mother's lawyer called, trying to negotiate a settlement. This is getting out of hand, Stuart Matheson said. Your client is making serious accusations that could damage Mrs. Caldwell's reputation irreparably. We're prepared to offer a reasonable settlement, $50,000, and everyone walks away. Not interested, Gary said. See you in court. Julia called me that night, furious. You subpoenaed the church records? Do you have any idea what that's doing to Mom? She's humiliated. People are talking. You're destroying her. She destroyed herself. What's that supposed to mean? You'll find out in court. You've been subpoenaed too, by the way. As a church guild member, you'll have to testify about the finances. I don't know anything about the finances. Then it should be easy. She hung up on me. Brandon's lawyer also reached out, trying to distance Brandon from my mother's financial issues. My client had no knowledge of any impropriety regarding the source of Mrs. Caldwell's investments. He believed the funds were legitimately hers to invest. He should not be punished for her poor judgment. But the business partnership documents told a different story. Brandon had signed forms acknowledging the money came from family trust resources. He'd known. Maybe not everything, but enough. 3 days before court, I got one more piece of luck. Dennis, the private investigator, called. I found something else. Security camera footage from the casino. Your mother's been there a lot. Way more than the credit card records show. I think she's been using cash too, trying to hide the extent of the problem. I've got timestamps, footage of her at the tables, everything. How'd you get casino footage? I know a guy. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Everything was coming together. The case had transformed from a simple trust fund dispute into a comprehensive expose of my mother's years of financial fraud and deception. Gary spent the final 2 days preparing me for testimony. How to speak. How to present myself. How to stay calm when my mother's lawyer attacked my credibility. They're going to come at you hard, he warned. They'll try to make you look vindictive, mentally unstable, obsessed with the past. You need to stay calm. Stick to facts. Don't get emotional. I'll try. The judge is Sandra Martinez. She's fair but no nonsense. She doesn't like games. That works in our favor, because your mother's side has been playing a lot of games. But it means we need to be straightforward and honest. No dramatics. Just truth. The night before court, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the motel room, watching headlights cross the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. My father had tried to protect me and failed. Now it was up to me to finish what he started, to expose the truth, to get justice not just for myself, but for everyone my mother had stolen from. I thought about Brandon too, the bully who'd never faced real consequences for anything he'd done, who'd learned early that charm and manipulation could get him whatever he wanted, who'd found in my mother a perfect enabler. Tomorrow, all of it would come out. The lies, the theft, the betrayal, everything. I just hoped it would be enough. The courthouse was packed. Family members filled the gallery. Church community members, local press. Everyone wanted to see the spectacle of a son taking his mother to court. My mother sat at the plaintiff's table with Stuart Matheson, her expensive lawyer. She wore a conservative dress, pearls, the perfect picture of a respectable widow. Her expression was calm, slightly sad, like she was disappointed in me but willing to forgive. Brandon sat behind her, Amanda next to him. They both looked polished, professional, like they'd stepped out of a medical journal advertisement. I sat alone with Gary at the defendant's table. No family support, no friendly faces, just me and the truth. Judge Sandra Martinez entered. She was in her 50s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense demeanor. Let's begin. Matheson opened for my mother. His strategy was exactly what Gary predicted. He painted Patricia as a generous woman who'd tried to help someone in need. He showed character witnesses, church members, community leaders, all speaking to her charitable nature. He presented Brandon as a success story, evidence that her investment had been wise and good. Then he turned to me. Lester Caldwell has made serious accusations against his own mother out of what can only be described as greed and resentment. He's attempting to rewrite history, portraying himself as a victim when, in reality, he's simply angry that his mother chose to help someone else. This case is about a son who believes he's entitled to money simply because his father set up a trust fund, regardless of whether that money could do more good elsewhere. He called character witnesses for my mother. They all said the same things. She was wonderful, charitable, devoted to helping others. Lester was troubled, had always been difficult, was clearly going through something that made him lash out at the person who'd sacrificed most for him. Then it was Gary's turn. Your Honor, this case is not about charity or entitlement. It's about theft, fraud, and a systematic pattern of financial abuse spanning years. We will show that Patricia Caldwell has embezzled over $500,000 from multiple sources, including her own son's inheritance, church funds, a memorial scholarship, and her own mother's estate. We will show that her so-called charitable giving was actually a cover for personal spending and a gambling addiction. And we will show that the supposed beneficiary of her generosity, Brandon Garrett, was not a random, at-risk youth, but rather someone with a specific connection to her son, someone who had tormented Lester throughout high school. Gary presented our evidence methodically. First, the original trust documents my father had drafted, showing his clear intent that the money was for me alone, with limited trustee discretion. Then my father's journal entries. Gary read them aloud. The courtroom was silent as my father's words echoed through the space. His worries about my mother, his attempts to protect me, his regrets that he'd run out of time. Several people in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. Julia's face went pale. Next came the financial evidence. The forensic accountant took the stand and walked through every suspicious transaction. $300,000 from my trust, $35,000 from the church guild, $18,000 from the memorial fund, $60,000 from my grandmother's accounts. She showed casino records, credit card statements for luxury purchases, a pattern of someone living far beyond their means while systematically draining every account they controlled. Matheson objected repeatedly, tried to paint the spending as normal expenses, but the numbers didn't lie. My mother had been stealing for years. Then Taylor took the stand. She was calm, composed, devastating. She described her relationship with Brandon, the control, the abuse, the threats. She presented text messages where Brandon's mask slipped, where his true nature showed through. He told me once that people were easy to manipulate, if you figured out what they wanted, Taylor said. He said his mentor, Patricia, wanted to feel like she was saving someone, so he played the role of someone who needed saving. He laughed about it, said it was the easiest money he'd ever made. She showed emails where Brandon had mocked my mother, called her desperate and pathetic, bragged about how much money he'd gotten out of her. The courtroom buzzed. Amanda stood up and walked out, her face white. She pulled off her engagement ring as she left. Brandon's lawyer tried to discredit Taylor, but she had too much evidence. Text messages, voicemails, witnesses from medical school who'd seen Brandon's behavior firsthand. Then I took the stand. Gary walked me through my story, my childhood, the bullying, the hospital visits, the broken bones, my father's attempts to protect me, my mother's dismissals, finding out about the theft, everything. Matheson cross-examined aggressively. Isn't it true that you've been unemployed for weeks? That you're living in a motel? That you've alienated your entire family with these accusations? Yes. Doesn't that suggest that maybe you're not the most reliable narrator of these events? It suggests that my mother has influence in this town and has used it to isolate me, which is exactly what someone would do if they were trying to hide what they'd done. Or it suggests that you've behaved in ways that made people uncomfortable, and they've naturally distanced themselves. The bank records don't lie. The trust documents don't lie. My father's journal doesn't lie. Whatever people think of me personally, the evidence speaks for itself. Matheson tried to paint the high school bullying as exaggerated, but I had medical records, hospital visits, police reports from when Brandon's pranks crossed legal lines. It was all documented. Then Julia was called to testify about the church guild finances. She clearly hadn't wanted to be there. She confirmed that my mother had been treasurer. She confirmed that when they'd done an audit after I'd raised questions, they'd found discrepancies. She couldn't explain where the money had gone, but it was gone. Did your mother ever mention having financial difficulties? Gary asked. No. She always seemed comfortable. Nice clothes, nice vacations. Did you ever wonder how she afforded that lifestyle on a widow's pension and Social Security? Julia's face crumpled. I didn't think about it. The judge called a recess. When we returned, Matheson looked shaken. He'd clearly had a conversation with my mother during the break, and it hadn't gone well. He tried one last strategy. Your Honor, even if we accept that Mrs. Caldwell made some questionable financial decisions, the question remains whether those decisions violated her duties as trustee. The trust documents, as written and filed, gave her broad discretion. She may have used poor judgment, but poor judgment is not the same as illegal conduct. Gary stood. Your Honor, we're not just talking about poor judgment. We're talking about systematic fraud. Mrs. Caldwell didn't just make bad decisions with trust funds she legitimately controlled. She embezzled from multiple sources. She lied about where the money was going. She created false narratives to cover her tracks. She attempted to completely disinherit her son while enriching someone with no legal claim to family assets. This goes far beyond discretion. This is theft. Judge Martinez called for closing arguments. Both lawyers made their cases. Then she spoke. I've reviewed all the evidence presented. I've heard testimony from multiple witnesses. I've examined financial records spanning several years. And I have to say, I am deeply troubled by what I've seen. She looked at my mother. Mrs. Caldwell, you were given a position of trust. Multiple positions of trust, in fact. Your husband trusted you to manage funds for your son's benefit. Your church trusted you with their finances. Veterans organizations trusted you with memorial funds. Your own mother trusted you with her financial affairs. And in every case, you violated that trust. My mother's composure finally cracked. Her face flushed red. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of financial impropriety spanning years. You systematically drained your son's inheritance to fund both legitimate and illegitimate expenses. You embezzled from charitable organizations. You stole from your own mother's estate. And you attempted to cover all of this by creating a narrative that your son was unstable and your spending was charitable. Judge Martinez shuffled papers. I'm ruling in favor of the defendant on all counts. Mrs. Caldwell, you are ordered to repay the full amount taken from Lester Caldwell's trust fund, including interest, totaling $360,000. You are ordered to repay the church guild and memorial fund. Furthermore, as partial compensation for damages and to ensure payment, I am awarding Mr. Caldwell your primary residence, which will be sold or transferred to him within 30 days. My mother gasped. Additionally, I am removing you as trustee of any remaining trust assets and appointing an independent trustee. I am referring this matter to the prosecutor's office for potential criminal charges related to embezzlement and fraud, and I am denying your restraining order request and instead issuing an order barring you from contacting Mr. Caldwell or attempting to interfere with his relationships with other family members. She turned to Brandon. Mr. Garrett, while you may not have known the full extent of Mrs. Caldwell's financial misconduct, the evidence suggests you were aware the funds came from family trust resources. Your business partnership with Mrs. Caldwell is ordered dissolved, and you are required to return the investment capital to the estate within 90 days. I'm also noting for the record that a complaint has been filed with the State Medical Licensing Board regarding your conduct. That will be handled through their processes. The gavel came down. I sat there, stunned. I'd won. Completely. Outside the courthouse, Marcus waited for me. Hey, he said. I'm sorry for not believing you sooner. I saw everything in there, and I'm sorry. Thanks for coming. Mom's talking to her lawyer. She's pretty wrecked. Julia too. But Lester, you were right. About all of it. I should have trusted you. We talked for a few minutes. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. Julia sent me an email later that day. I need time to process everything. What I saw today changed how I see a lot of things. I don't know if we can fix our relationship, but I want you to know I believe you now. I'm sorry I didn't before. The local newspaper ran the real story the next day. Prominent community member, embezzled hundreds of thousands, court rules. My mother's perfect image was destroyed. Her church community that had rallied around her now felt betrayed. The people who'd shunned me suddenly wanted to apologize. Brandon's medical career was under review. Taylor's complaint to the licensing board, combined with evidence from the trial, had triggered an investigation into his conduct and character fitness. Amanda had broken off the engagement. His perfect future was crumbling. My mother faced criminal charges. The prosecutor filed multiple counts of embezzlement and fraud. She'd likely spend time in prison. I moved into the family home, the house I'd grown up in. It felt strange at first, walking through rooms full of memories. But gradually, it started to feel like mine, like a place where I could rebuild. I found a new job, working remotely for a design firm 3 states away. They didn't know my history, didn't care about local gossip. They just wanted good work, and I could finally focus on providing that. I started therapy to process everything: the betrayal, the trauma, the years of bullying, the systematic destruction of my life by someone who was supposed to protect me. It was painful work, but necessary. With some of the recovered money, I established a scholarship fund in my father's name. Not at the high school where he taught, that felt too connected to my mother. Instead, at the community college, for students who'd overcome bullying or family trauma, people who'd survived and were trying to build something better. The first scholarship went to a young woman who'd been homeless for 2 years after her family kicked her out. She sent me a letter thanking me, saying it was the first time anyone had believed in her. I understood that feeling completely. 6 months after the trial, I stood in my father's old study, looking at his photo on the desk. I'd found it in a box, him laughing at some family gathering, before cancer, before everything fell apart. "I finished it, Dad," I said to the photo. "I exposed the truth. I got justice, not just for me, but for everyone she stole from." I thought about everything I'd learned, about how the people closest to you can hurt you the deepest, about how appearances of respectability mean nothing compared to actual character, about how speaking truth, even when no one believes you, is still worth it. I'd learned that sometimes fighting back means losing everything before you can win anything, that standing up for yourself might cost you family, friends, reputation, everything you thought mattered, but that doing it anyway is how you find out who you really are. I'd learned that documentation matters, evidence matters. Truth, backed by proof, eventually wins even when lies have a head start. Most importantly, I'd learned that you can't control what people do to you, but you can control whether you let it destroy you. Brandon had bullied me for 4 years. My mother had betrayed me for longer. But in the end, I was still standing, changed, harder, more cautious, but standing. The betrayal broke me down. The fight rebuilt me stronger. Not everyone believes you at first. Some never will. Julia was starting to come around, slowly. Marcus had apologized, and we were rebuilding our relationship. But some extended family members still thought I'd been too harsh, too vindictive, that I should have just forgiven and moved on. Maybe they were right. Maybe I could have taken the high road, walked away, let my mother keep her perfect image while I suffered in silence. But I don't think my father would have wanted that. He'd tried to protect me and run out of time. Finishing his fight, exposing the truth, was how I honored his memory. The best revenge isn't vindictive. It's not about destroying someone for the sake of destruction. The best revenge is standing up, telling the truth, and watching their perfect lies collapse under the weight of evidence. It's reclaiming your narrative. It's refusing to be the villain in someone else's story when you know you're the victim in the real one. My life isn't perfect now. I'm still rebuilding, still healing, still figuring out what comes next. But I'm doing it on my own terms, in my own house, with my own truth finally acknowledged. And that, more than any amount of money or any courtroom victory, is what matters. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had someone close to you betray your trust in a way that made you question everything you thought you knew about them? Maybe it wasn't as dramatic as my story, but betrayal comes in many forms. How did you handle it? Did you fight back or walk away? Did you get justice, or did you have to find peace without it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how others have navigated these impossible situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories about overcoming injustice and betrayal. And share this with anyone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself, even when it costs you everything, is sometimes the only way forward. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope wherever you are in your own journey, you find the strength to fight for your truth. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, you deserve people in your life who choose you, not people who make you feel like you have to earn basic respect and honesty. Until next time.